How's it going, everyone? This is Mike. Welcome back to my channel. And tonight I would like to show you several films that I have bought recently in the DVD-R format from several online sellers. Now, these are films which are very obscure, and most of which, at least in this country, the United States, they don't have any kind of commercial DVD or Blu-ray release. And this is pretty much the only way you can find them. Some of these online sellers that have long lists of films and TV shows that you just can't find anywhere else. And most of them are, well, some of the ones I will show you have been filmed from television. Some of the ones here at the very beginning of the film, you see the Turner Classic Movies logo. And yet you have a very good print. It's a very watchable print of the movie, and it's complete. Some of them, I think, are taken from VHS tapes. And most of them, I have to say, the ones I'm going to show you today are actually very, very watchable. And even though they're not remastered, they're not on Blu-ray and all this sort of thing, they definitely worth buying. So I'm going to show you things from 3 different sellers. I'll try to remember to put links down below so you can check these people out. Maybe you can enjoy doing this as well. Okay, first of all, I bought 9 films from a company called the Vermont Movie Store. Okay, and starting off with An Inspector Calls from 1954, this fantastic English film starring Alastair Sim. I had heard of this title for many, many years. I'd never had a chance to see it. And I expected it to be good and enjoyable, but I didn't think it would be this much of a morality play and almost mystical at the end. Alastair Sim's absolutely fantastic. So, black and white. This is a fantastic documentary, Let's Get Lost, from the year 1988. Actually, it was filmed a little bit before that. It's about the trumpet player and jazz singer Chet Baker, who died in 1988 at the age of 58. He had a long and very successful career with a lot of ups and downs, struggle with drug addiction from his very young age. And this shows Chet Baker at the end of his life, close to the end of his life, both performing, rehearsing, and interacting with some of his friends, some of the women he was involved with, and also being interviewed. So it has all these things of the latter-day Chet Baker, but it also goes back into history all the way to the early 1950s, showing the young Chet Baker and how he was starting out, and even showing scenes from a few films that he made. It's fascinating. Beautiful black and white cinematography. The whole thing looks like sort of a beatnik film noir type, very jazz-oriented atmosphere. It's wonderful. And yeah, it makes me want to know more and more about Chet Baker. I don't know that much about him, but I'm beginning to explore his music. He was a very, very talented guy. It's interesting that at the end of his life, they show one of his last performances, just a close-up of his face, and he's singing this beautiful song. And even though he has a ravaged face, his voice is just as beautiful as it ever was. It's just fantastic. Okay, here's another film from 1956, directed by Robert Aldrich. This is Joan Crawford in Autumn Leaves, co-starring Cliff Robertson, Lorne Greene, and Vera Miles. I had never seen this before. This is one of Joan Crawford's best latter-day films. Well, you say latter-day, she struggled a lot in the 1950s, but she did some very good films. And this was directed by Robert Aldrich, who 6 years down the road would work with Joan Crawford again in the classic film Whatever Happened to Baby Jane with Bette Davis. This is a very, very good movie. I was quite surprised. Good performance by a very young Cliff Robertson. Here's another classic English film, Odd Man Out, from 1946 or 1947, one of the two, directed by Carol Reed, starring James Mason. Absolutely fantastic movie, kind of a film noirish quality to it. It takes place in an unnamed city in Northern Ireland, and it has to do with a group of men involved in an illegal organization, also unnamed, fighting against British rule. And it involves these people who they're trying to, well, they decide to rob a large company so they can get money to buy weapons. And everything goes wrong, and James Mason is the odd man out of the group. He is left behind at the scene of the robbery, and he escapes into the city and into the night, and it shows his odyssey through this dark and terrible night, and all the people that he meets, gets involved with, and the efforts of not only the police, but also this man's co-conspirators and friends, and the woman that he is in love with, played by Kathleen Ryan, who's beautiful, who are all trying to find him. And it's at the end, it's just a very shocking ending. Fantastic movie. Okay, highly recommended. Here's another English film from 1952 or 53, I think. I'm not sure. This is Father Brown Detective, starring Alec Guinness as a Catholic priest, based on a novel by G.K. Chesterton. I guess this was filmed before, back in the 1930s. But this is a very enjoyable little film. A lot of comical moments, but a lot of very poignant moments as well, as Father Brown is trying to regain an artifact from his church that has been stolen by this very famous French thief named, what is it, Flambeau, played by Peter Finch. Really a terrific movie. Okay, next up, going in a completely different direction, a completely different country. This is a 1966 American film called A Man Could Get Killed, starring James Garner, Melina Mercouri, Sandra Dee, and Tony Franciosa. This is not a great film at all, but it really wasn't bad. I'd never seen it before. It is a parody, or tries to be a parody of some of the spy flicks of the 1960s. Spies were very big in the 1960s, you know. And so James Garner is an American who goes over to Lisbon, Portugal, and is mistaken for someone who is an agent. And he gets into all these incredible, just unbelievable situations that he has no idea why this is happening to him. Good supporting cast. Melina Mercouri, of course, is a beautiful Greek actress. She's very beautiful, very sexy. Sandra Dee, this was one of her. I know a lot of you don't care about Sandra Dee, but she was a big star in sort of bubble-headed American films in the 1960s. Started out in a few really good movies in the late 1950s, and maintained her status as kind of a beautiful blonde teenage star into the mid-1960s. This is one of the last films she did during her Universal contract, and after this she didn't make that many films at all. It's interesting because she was very unhappy doing this, but it's actually the first film in her filmography where she displays a little bit of maturity. It's almost as though you can see her being able to maybe segue into adult roles as a more mature actress. But this is pretty much where she pretty much stopped, and it's kind of sad. I guess there was a lot of drama behind the scenes. James Garner and Anthony Franciosa hated each other. They actually got into a fight. It was a very unpleasant situation, but not a great film. It was kind of at this cutoff point in the late 60s where this was still back in the old Hollywood way of doing things, just kind of being a little bit suggestive sexually, not really demonstrating anything, and with no foul language. About a year from now, everything would be different. Everything would change. This is sort of an old-fashioned 1960s Hollywood film. Kind of fun to watch, though, anyway. Next up is another Hollywood film from 1947, Morning Becomes Elektra. How's that for a title? I was always intrigued by that title, and that's what made me send away for this. Rosalind Russell, Michael Redgrave, who else is in it? Katina Paxano, and who's the other guy? Sorry. Hang on here. Let's see. Raymond Massey. Okay. Yeah, Raymond Massey. Great movie. This is based on Eugene O'Neill's play, which is based on a Greek legend. And Elektra is the name of this woman that Rosalind Russell's playing back in the Greek legend. Her name in the movie is, what is it? Oh God, Ellen, I believe. Yeah, that's right. No, I'm sorry, Lavinia. Well, what do I know? Anyway, it's a fantastic movie. It's a very long movie. It's very overdramatic, very stagey in some places. And I guess it wasn't terribly successful. It just didn't go over with audiences at all. But I think it's a great performance by every one of these actors, especially Rosalind Russell and especially Michael Redgrave, who really is terrific in this. Okay, next up is a film from 1977, Looking for Mr. Goodbar. I remember seeing this back when it first came out. A very creepy film. Not a pleasant experience. Diane Keaton, Tuesday Weld, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, gives a great performance in this film. Richard Gere, one of his first movies, Tom Berenger, and it has disco music. Plays a lot of music by Donna Summer, which was very popular back then. As I said, not a pleasant film to watch, but I wanted to see it again, and I'm glad that I did. And I'm not going to watch it too many times after this, but yeah. And finally, from 1972, this is Cisco Pike, starring Chris Christopherson in his film debut, who's very good, very natural actor, Gene Hackman and Karen Black. A terrific film. I was very surprised by this. It's kind of a typical laid-back, youth-oriented film from the early 1970s, and it gets kind of crazy at the end. Gene Hackman plays a cop who he's actually a narc, and he has arrested Cisco Pike several times for possession of drugs. Cisco Pike is a musician who's having a difficult time in his life, and he's trying to make a living and keep himself and his girlfriend going. His girlfriend, played by Karen Black, is also very good, by selling marijuana. But he finally decides to get out of the whole business and not do it anymore. Gene Hackman shows up with 40 gazillion pounds of marijuana that he blackmails Cisco Pike into selling for him. So it just shows Cisco Pike trying to sell all this grass, and things getting crazier with every scene. In fact, Gene Hackman, his character gets crazier with every scene. Very good performance by Gene Hackman, Cisco Pike. Now, moving on to another company called, oh, sorry, didn't work out to it. I'm reaching back behind the webcam here, folks. Another company called Zeus DVDs, all right? And they put them in these little cheapo plastic packages. Sorry, I'm just having a hard time tonight. So I got 4 things by this company, Zeus DVDs. The first is something called At Long Last Love. This is a film directed by Peter Bogdanovich in 1975, starring, let's see, Burt Reynolds, Sybil Shepherd, Madeline Kahn, Eileen Brennan, John Hillerman, and Duilio del Prete, an Italian actor that I'd never seen in anything before or since. This is a musical that Bogdanovich made. He decided to make a musical celebrating the music of Cole Porter in that era, back in the 1930s. So everything looked that way. It actually looks beautiful. But he has all these actors and actresses, none of whom can sing or dance, singing and dancing through something like 19 numbers. Now, it starts out beautifully. It has Madeline Kahn, who is made for stuff like this. She's singing a song called Down in the Depths on the 19th Floor, and it's hilarious. It's funny. She's perfect at this kind of thing. But then it goes on, and then it just really gets old because it's just too much. And the satire, if it is satire, it just doesn't work. But I'm very glad that I saw this. It's fascinating to watch. This is a 1970 film, an English film called Connecting Rooms, starring Bette Davis, Michael Redgrave, Leo Jen, and a young English actor whose name was Alexis Canner. It was actually made in 1969 and then released in 1970 in the United States very briefly. Very hard to find. Bette Davis plays a cellist living in this apartment house where literally she has a room that connects with another room which is inhabited by Michael Redgrave, and it just shows all these people living in this apartment house getting involved with each other. It's really not that terrific. Again, Michael Redgrave is probably the best thing in the movie. Bette Davis has a lot of good moments, but by this time her acting was so overly mannered that she wasn't that interesting anymore. Although she looks terrific, but it's a definite curiosity. Next up, this is another Bette Davis classic from 1949. This is Beyond the Forest. This is actually the last film that Bette Davis made under her Warner Brothers contract, and she was totally unsuited for this part that she played. She was much too old. It's not a great film, but it's a fascinating film, and it's the one where she gives the immortal line, "What a dump," co-starring Joseph Cotton. It's absolutely worth seeing. I don't know why they haven't released this. They've released almost every other Bette Davis film from the 30s and the 40s, but this one, I don't know. I think her fans would love to have a remastered version of this. Beyond the Forest. Finally, from 1926, This is the Lillian Gish version of The Scarlet Letter. I believe it was the first version of this film ever made, and of course it's a silent movie. Directed by Victor Sjostrom, the same man who directed The Phantom Carriage and also acted in it, and then later on acted in Wild Strawberries. Victor Sjostrom. And this is a beautiful movie. I haven't yet watched this since I've got it, but I remember seeing this years ago on Turner Classic Movies, and I just was entranced by it. It's wonderful. So I'm hoping this is a very good print. All these others were actually very good. Now, finally, here's a film from another company called Loving the Classics. Okay, they also have a list of unbelievably obscure things from TV and film, and unfortunately their service is not all that great. I guess it's a one-person operation or something like that, but they do their best. They really do. This is the 1916 movie called East Lynne, starring Theda Bara. Now, I was curious about this because it is only one of, let's see, one of three features made by Theda Bara in her career, starting in 1915, ending in 1925 or 26. Three features out of something like 41 films that still survives. They found a 16 millimeter print of this film in 1971, and it was taken to a museum or something and preserved for a long time. I don't know how they managed to get this, because I don't think it's ever been released anywhere where, commercially. So the only thing I understand that this film is not representative of Theda Bara's standard vamp acting style, where she plays an evil, man-destroying creature. I guess she plays a good creature or a good woman in this one. So it may not be that exciting, but I put this in. It looks really good, but there's no soundtrack to it at all, so it might be kind of a laborious effort to watch this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Finally, one more thing. I'd like. This is a message to my friend Blu-ray Frank. Frank, I hope you're watching. Frank challenged me, sort of challenged me to watch the Godfather films, and I told him I'd only seen Godfather 1 back in 1972 when it first came out. I have not seen it since, never saw the sequel. So I went out tonight to Barnes & Noble and I found this 30% off. I couldn't pass it up. So I'm going to immerse myself into the Mafia universe. Okay, so that's my video. Thanks for watching, folks. Sorry to keep you for 17 minutes and 43 seconds. Comments are welcome.